So you'd already thought that way, because a lot of times, a lot of the executives or artists is after they've been successful, they start to get offers for stuff. But then, when someone's bringing stuff, you don't really have, if it's not on your radar, you don't really have sort of the control of what it is. But you're saying that you went in thinking about branding and everything more so than just how many records we're going to be selling.
Records was the core business, and it's from records. That's why when I hear artists say, "Oh, I hate the record label, they make all the money." Well, first of all, they gave you a loan, and so you wouldn't even be here talking had they not given you the loan, called an advance. It's really when there's advance, you got to pay it back. But understanding that when you understand the record industry, you understand that artists seldom are going to make money selling records. How it's been designed from day one is the record industry, and rightfully so. If I invest in Apple, I want to get my money back, right?
Yeah.
And so that core audience, though, that the record label helped build, now I can go sell them other things. Now I can go market other things. Now I can go market by live touring, and I can market radio, television and movies and dolls and toys and computer games and merchandise and all sorts of things. But I understood that going into it because I came from corporate America. So I had a different headset.
I remember, because I remember how I interviewed Don Robinson from In Vogue, but even Donnell Jones, and he says that he didn't think he ever made any money from the face, but he made all his money as because he was a writer and he owned almost 75% of his publishing and the touring, and it's almost as if most artists, unless they do the diamonds, get to sell 10 million plus albums, very rarely see the money, but they also assume that the labels were the bad people and their managers and stuff. But it was very interesting that you had a very different perspective that, look, they're giving you a loan, they're investing in you. If you don't do well, then they lose the money. But, how do you take advantage of the opening and opportunity they've given you?
And that's why one of the reasons I think I succeeded is because presidents of Columbia Records, they loved me because I wanted them to win. We were in a partnership. I understood it. And by the way, when I talked about all of the revenue streams, I left out the publishing. Back then, we were selling CDs. And so if you wrote on the song, then you got paid on the manufacturing, not the sales. When they manufacture it, because intellectual property works that way. Wow. It's a little different now that we're in the streaming world. So also, if you're a songwriter, you made a significant amount of money. And it's only fair that if they put up the money to get this started and invest, that they get their money back and that they made a significant return on their investment. That's how business works. And so when we see artists and managers that have this hate relationship, they don't understand it. Immediately they don't understand it, because they haven't gotten the knowledge to understand how this works.
Knowing about the publishing side, did you then encourage the artists you had signed, Beyonce and the rest, to get into writing, because that is a revenue stream that is important to hold on to and to develop that side?
What I encouraged, and again, transitional, I encouraged them on the first times they were in the studio to learn as much as they could. They weren't ready yet to write songs. Learn the process. Have your eyes and ears wide open to learn the process of songwriting. Because it shouldn't be, I'm doing this because I want to make money. It should be, you're going to hear over and over from me, knowledge is power. You do it because you understand the process. And that's what makes you great at it. So initially, on the first album, Destiny's Child didn't write any songs on the first album of Destiny's Child, but they learned the process. So on the second album, they wrote more. They learn the process. Now they're producing and in the studio, and they now are producers as well as songwriters, understanding the process, constantly growing, gathering and gaining more knowledge. That's what makes greatness.
Yeah. The other part of it, though, is talent. You can't replace talent. That's, because learning like Michael Jackson, I always will remember that they said when he was 5 and 6, Barry Gordy said that he'll just be in the studio watching and learning, and when everyone else is playing, he'll just be learning everything. So it was no surprise that he was both an excellent businessman, but also just how he took off with his career, and how you then, in a way, directed your first Destiny Child to sort of learn and follow and learn, and not just rely on just the fame. Was it a battle at all? Because I don't know, because I have no, we're on this side, so I don't know. Was it easy for the artist to listen and understand what you were saying and actually take that knowledge on board?
Well, it was an easier process because, Beyonce, Kelly lived with us.
Okay.
Solange wrote, most people aren't aware, Solange wrote a number of hit songs for Destiny Child and Beyonce. She's a prolific songwriter. But if you're living in a household where your dad, think about it, you're living in a household, your dad is the #1 sales rep in the world, and your mom makes $1 million with the top hair salon in the world, you're gonna learn a lot about business, right? So they had the opportunity that most artists don't have, and to grow up in a family that entrepreneurship, and so you learn just by being in the family and just listening as a kid at the dinner table, parents talking about their day and sharing the successes, but we also shared the failures. Because we always wanted our kids, and even when I teach and even when I speak, I also talk about the failures, because failures are always, and mistakes, are opportunities to grow, not a reason to quit, right?
Why did you decide not to have, because back in the late mid-90s, we did have people like Mary J. Blige, Toni Braxton. So we had very successful female artists. Brandy, you mentioned earlier. Why did you decide to come up with a group instead of just having, Beyonce on her own and Solange and just having them as solo artists?
Because I didn't start out managing Beyonce. Beyonce started out in a girls group called Girls Time. And she was in that group for 2 years before I even got involved. All I did is drop her off at practice and pick her up at practice. I'm the #1 sales rep at Xerox Medical Systems. I'm not thinking about a girl group. I'm thinking about my next deal. So it was only until earlier I talked about failure and mistakes, the opportunity to grow. It was only when they lost on Star Search that it got my attention, that a change needed to happen. And then I transitioned, went back to school and stuff. And at the same time, what was happening for me personally was managed care in the medical field. And I knew I didn't want to do that anymore. After 20 years and transitioned and got the record deal for Lil O at MCA, and then full-time got into the music industry. And once in the music industry, then we got into the apparel industry with House of Darion and Darion. Didn't know anything about apparel, but again, used the skills I had learned before. Learn those fundamental skills. And that's why if anybody wants to be in the business side of music, if you're not taking classes and learning terminology, understanding the culture of the music industry, you're probably going to fail that. You just can't one day show up in a new industry, you've got to put in the work.
Yeah.
And I work, you're there in London. I work with 2 London-based schools. I work with LCCM. I'm on advisory board. I'll be teaching there in the next months. And I work with Point Blank Music School, both based right there in London. And Point Blank, in a month, I'll be my next class, Fundamentals of the Music Industry in a Digital Age, which will be online. So people listening, all they have to do is go online at Point Blank Music School to see the class.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll be sure to make sure that all this is detailed so that because we do get a mixture of those who are fans of the music industry, and then you have others who actually are thinking about how to succeed. But then we get so much of the horror stories that we almost think that you lose before you even start off, and I think that sense of knowledge and learning and understanding.
But
But
let
not,
me stop you there, because you made a very valid point. If I open an ice cream shop, if I don't understand how ice cream is made and how to sell ice cream, the equipment that I need to, then I'm gonna lose before I start, because I don't have the knowledge, right?
yeah,
And what probably happened, one day I walk in and all the ice cream is melted because I didn't know how to refrigerate. I
yeah.
mean, in anything we do to be really accomplishing great at it, you have to have the knowledge. It's just not a music thing. This is a life thing.
Yeah. Did you find then that the most successful, and I do wonder then, how did you manage, how much did you get involved when it comes to getting the right type of producers and writers for the group? Because it was very competitive in the 90s with different groups and labels and airplay. So the fact that you came from the business side, so we're looking at the creative side, how much of that did you get involved to really
Well,
help
one
shape?
thing, the one thing we haven't talked about here, and I'm just checking to see because I have another
Okay.
scheduled Zoom call. I want to stay on here. Yeah, I have about 3 minutes here. One of the things we haven't touched on and talked about is, you made it a comment on it, talent. Um, Beyonce was given amazing gift, and she's extremely passionate to this day about her craft. You ask, how did I get these producers? Anybody that's ever listened to Beyonce or saw her perform knew early on one day she would be a star if she continued to develop and work at it. So it wasn't hard to get producers. I mean, these guys are looking for the next big thing, send them a tape, and they were like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to work with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely appreciate the time. I know that you've got quite a bit going on. I think it's been really fascinating, educational, just the knowledge you've dropped about, learning, the vision, putting in the work, because that's it's going to be really key, and also not making excuses and not letting your past or anything sort of hold you back. I mean, I'm a I'm a psychotherapist, working with on the 19s here in the UK, and a lot of times when work with young people who are struggling with what has happened in the past or their parents, and they blame that and think, well, what's the point of living and stuff? And so you have to sort of help them refocus and reshape their vision and look forward and have a purpose. And hearing your sort of story and having, if anyone has an excuse to say, well, look at where I came from the South and look at how we didn't have money, and use that as an excuse, but you didn't. You used that almost as fuel to say, what, there's nothing that I can't accomplish. And people will say, well, what's the evidence he did that? Not only your success, but when you look at the success of your children and your family, it's also evidence that if you just continue to breathe that's something, positivity and hard work and ethic, that's something that can really take us to that next step. So I really
Well,
appreciate it.
I thank you for working. I thank you for working the work that you do. It's important work. I know we always talk about health and wellness, but we always have a reluctance, and hopefully that's changing. I'm seeing it change to talk about mental health and the importance of mental health. And we all, including myself, have struggles. I've spent 10 years going to therapists to talk about the traumas that I had in my childhood that affected me in my adult years. But getting a grasp and understanding that, again, I would say it over and over, knowledge is power. And getting that knowledge of understanding the triggers and the challenges of life. So I thank you for what you do, sir.
Oh, thank you. And in fact, I just remembered that you mentioned therapy, and I know that's something as men, especially Black men, that's something that we sort of run away from and think, now I'll talk to my guy or talk to the pastor and not seek professional help. So I just hope that's an awareness that we can continue to spread, especially for Black men, to talk.
Well, thank you. My assistant is calling me as we speak.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And for those that want to find out more about what I'm doing or book me to speak at an engagement, which I enjoy doing, just simply go to my name, MathewKnowles.com. You can find out where I'm teaching, where I'm speaking, if you'd like for me to speak, or any other information. So again, thank you for this time and have a wonderful day.
Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, but most importantly, to press the notification bell so that you can be notified when we do have a new interview. Loads to come, but thanks a lot for watching.
I